The night Diana Morrow whispered those 4 words to me, I understood 2 things at the same time. The first, I had been inside this caf 100 times. I knew the way the espresso machine hissed on its 3rd cycle. I knew which floorboard near the back door creaked if you stepped on the left side. I knew the exact pitch of the front door bell at 9 p.m. when the last customer left and the room went quiet. The second, I had never once thought about what was upstairs. She said it quietly. The way you say something you've been holding a long time, and everything I thought I knew about Diana Morrow, the woman who had fed me leftovers for 6 years, who had called me sweetheart with the same warmth she used for everyone, who had always been Claire's mom, rearranged itself into something I wasn't prepared for. Beat 2. Self-introduction plus world setup. My name is James Callahan. I'm 34. I design residential interiors, not the glossy magazine kind, the kind where real people actually live. I help them figure out what they want their homes to feel like. It's a job that requires a lot of listening, a moderate tolerance for indecision, and a complete immunity to the phrase "I'll know it when I see it." I live in a 1st-floor flat 12 minutes from the town center. I own exactly 1 plant, a fern I inherited from a client who moved abroad and entrusted it to me with a seriousness usually reserved for wills. The fern has survived 4 years under my care, which I consider disproportionately flattering. Claire Morrow was my best friend. We met at university during a fire drill that lasted 40 minutes in the rain, and by the end of it we had already exhausted every opinion we had about architecture, bad coffee, and people who don't know how to queue. We have been close friends for 12 years. We have never been anything else. I want to be clear about that. Diana Morrow, Claire's mother, was 53. A former secondary school art teacher who had taken early retirement 7 years ago and, on what she later described as a complete fever dream of a Tuesday, signed a lease on a small caf in the high street called the Kettle and Cream. It seated 22 people. It smelled permanently of warm butter and ground cardamom. The walls were hung with small paintings, changed every 2 months. Always local artists. Always unsigned until someone bought one and asked. She had short silver-streaked dark hair she kept tucked behind one ear. The left one, always. She wore an apron the color of old linen, with her name embroidered on the pocket, in the kind of thread that used to be called duck-egg blue. She had a habit of pressing 2 fingers to her collarbone when she was thinking, and she laughed like a woman who had decided a long time ago that life was funnier than it had any right to be. Her prop, the thing I always associated with her, was a small ceramic mug she refused to sell regardless of how often customers asked. It had a chip on the handle and a painted fox on the side, and she drank from it exclusively. She said it was the first thing she bought for the caf before she had a name for it. I think she thought the fox was lucky. The reason I had never thought about her that way was simple and, in retrospect, embarrassing in its neatness. She was Claire's mum. She was 53. She had always treated me with the warm, uncomplicated generosity of a woman who genuinely liked having people in her caf and genuinely liked feeding them. There was no ambiguity in it. None that I could see, anyway. I told myself that explained everything. It explained very little. Beat 3. The inciting incident 3 months ago. Claire called me at 7:30 on a Friday evening. "I need a favor," she said, "and before you say anything, I want you to know that I already feel terrible about asking." This was historically how Claire opened requests that were either very easy or very inconvenient. There was no middle ground. Mum's got a water issue at the caf. Something in the back wall. The plumber says it's fine to run tomorrow, but the prep won't get done tonight. I was supposed to go help her close and clean, but I'm stuck at a work thing in Leeds, and I'm not back until Sunday. Claire, she won't ask you herself. I've already texted her that you're coming. She'll pretend to be put upon about it, and then she'll feed you. And you will leave full and slightly dazed, as you always do. She was not wrong about any part of that. She rarely was. The caf was warm when I arrived. The smell hit first. The cardamom and butter. Something underneath it like rain on old brick from the damp patch in the back room. The last few customers were gathering coats. Diana was wiping the counter with a cloth in the methodical, unhurried way of someone who did it hundreds of times a year and had stopped counting. She looked up when the bell rang. "James," she said it the way she always did. Warmly, simply, like my name was a perfectly ordinary thing to say. "You didn't have to." "I know. Claire told you she'd already texted me that you were coming, didn't she?" Verbatim, Diana exhaled through her nose, not quite a laugh, and went back to wiping the counter. "Aprons are on the hook by the kitchen. Mugs go in the second rack. Don't touch the espresso machine. I've used that machine before. You've attempted that machine before. We worked together for 2 hours. The caf closed. The chairs went up. The floor was swept. I fixed a loose panel on the prep counter with a screwdriver from her junk drawer while she did the till, and at some point the radio switched from the evening program to something slower, and the room got quieter. That was when it happened. She was standing at the window with her back to me, looking out at the empty high street. One hand pressed flat against the glass. Her apron was still on. The Fox mug was on the sill beside her. "Empty," she said, without turning around. "Do you ever get tired of being good at holding things together?" I didn't answer immediately. I wasn't sure she was asking me, exactly. It felt like the kind of thing you say when you're mostly asking yourself. "Sometimes," I said. She turned around then. She looked at me, not quickly, not with the warm efficiency she usually moved through things, just looked, like she was deciding something. Then she picked up the Fox mug, rinsed it at the bar sink, and said, "I'll make something to eat before you go." And that was that. Except I drove home that night thinking about the way she had looked at me. And I couldn't explain why. Beat 4. The revelation spiral sub-beat A. The first private admission I told myself the drive home had just been a long day. I'd been standing for 2 hours on a concrete floor, and my brain had done what tired brains do, attached significance to the ordinary. Diana had looked at me. She was a perceptive woman. She looked at most things carefully. It meant nothing. I told myself this for approximately 4 days. On the 5th day, I caught myself wondering, for no reason I could justify, what she ordered when she ate alone at her own caf. Whether she sat at the front table near the window or the small round one in the corner away from the door. Whether she read when she ate or just sat. I put my phone face down and went back to work. I had poor survival instincts, apparently. Sub-beat B. The evidence pile the following Saturday, I went back to the caf for my usual coffee. This was not unusual. I went most Saturdays. It had never carried any weight before. Diana was behind the counter. She had a morning rush on. 4 people queuing, one at the counter asking about the painting nearest the window. She managed all 3 conversations simultaneously with the easy multitasking of someone who had been running a small operation alone for 7 years. She didn't see me come in. So I sat down and watched her work. Not for long. A minute, maybe, but here is the thing about watching someone work who is genuinely good at what they do. There's a quality to it that is very difficult to look away from. Not performance, not effort, just competence, moving through a small space with complete quiet confidence. She knew where every cup was without looking. She remembered the order before the customer finished saying it. She laughed at something the woman by the window said. A real laugh, sudden and unguarded, and her whole face changed. That was the first crack, not the look from last week. This, her laughing like she had no idea I was watching. Then she turned, saw me, and something very small and very fast moved across her face before she rearranged it into a smile. James, usual? Please, that micro-expression. I kept trying to name it on the drive home, and I couldn't. Not surprise, not displeasure. Something that looked more like relief quickly covered up. 2 weeks later, I had lunch with Claire. We met at a pub near her flat. About halfway through, she put down her glass and said, with the casual delivery she reserved for dropping small bombs, "Mum mentioned you came in last Saturday. I go most Saturdays." She mentioned it twice. Claire was looking at me with an expression I had learned over 12 years to treat as a warning. "She mentions things," I said. "Sure." She picked her glass back up. She also said, and I'm quoting her directly because I want you to have the exact wording, "He sat there for 40 minutes with one coffee and seemed to have nowhere to be." I had been in that caf for 40 minutes. I had not realized it was 40 minutes. I am a man who tracks his schedule in 15-minute increments for a living. This was either evidence of a very good cup of coffee or evidence of something I was not yet willing to look at directly. I went with the coffee theory. Excellent survival instincts, as established. Then, 6 weeks after the first Friday night, Diana called me herself. This was the first time she had ever called me directly. "I have a question," she said, "and I want you to answer it honestly before you remember that I'm Claire's mother and start being polite." I'm always honest. "James, you're right. I become diplomatic in the presence of anyone who has ever fed me. I want to repaint the caf. The back wall, specifically. I've been looking at it for 7 years, and I think I've been wrong about it for all 7. There's a warm gray I keep being drawn back to. But I can't see it in the room. You're an interior designer. That's the job." It was a professional question. I answered it professionally. I went in on Tuesday morning before the caf opened, and we stood in the back room with paint swatches in the particular light of that hour, and talked about undertones and the relationship between the color of walls and the color of things people bring into a space. We talked for 2 hours. At some point she handed me a swatch and said, "Tell me what this reminds you of." "Evening in November," I said. "The 10 minutes before it goes fully dark." She looked at the swatch for a long time. Then she said very quietly, "That's exactly what I thought." And then she looked at me. Not quickly, not away. I held the swatch a beat too long. Sub-beat C, mutual recognition without words. The night she asked me to come upstairs was the 3rd Friday in a row I'd helped her close. This had become, without either of us formally agreeing to it, a thing that happened. Claire was in Leeds more often than not. Diana closed late on Fridays. I had no standing reason to be there, and a complete lack of interest in staying away. That night the back wall had been painted. The warm gray was up, dry, and in the light of the caf's lamps it looked exactly like what I had said. The 10 minutes before it goes fully dark. She'd left the Fox mug on the counter rather than the window sill, and I didn't ask why. We worked through the closing routine. Neither of us spoke much. The quiet had a different weight to it tonight. I was aware of her moving around the room behind me, the soft sound of the cloth on the counter, the specific creak of the 3rd floorboard, the moment the radio was switched off. Then, nothing. I turned around. She was standing in the middle of the caf, apron still on, the Fox mug in both hands. She was looking at me with the expression from the Tuesday morning, more direct now. Steadier, I didn't look away. Neither did she. Outside the high street was empty. The lamp above the counter was the only light still on. The new gray wall held the color of the room like it had always been there. She pressed 2 fingers to her collarbone, her thinking gesture, and then she lowered her hand. "I've been trying to decide," she said, "whether this is something I should say or something I should just continue not saying." My chest had done a thing I was going to refuse to describe. "And?" I said. She looked at the mug, then up at me. "Come upstairs with me," she said. Very quiet. The words barely moved the air. Beat 5. The confession upstairs was an apartment. I had known there was a flat above the caf in the abstract way you know things that don't yet belong to your experience of a place. Now it was a narrow staircase, a low-ceilinged sitting room, 2 lamps on low, a window that looked out over the back of the high street where delivery vans parked. She made tea. She had not offered me tea. She simply made it, the gesture ahead of the question, the care expressed as action. She set a mug in front of me and sat down across from me at the small kitchen table. She put her hands around her cup. She did not speak immediately. "The first Friday you came in," she said, "with the water problem. When you left, I told myself it was just a long day, and I'd been tired and grateful, and I was reading too much into an ordinary kindness." I knew this speech, not because I'd heard it before, because I'd delivered a version of it to myself on 4 consecutive evenings. But then you came back on Saturday, and I watched you not notice how long you'd been sitting there. And I thought, he's doing the same thing I am. She lifted her eyes to mine. "I might be completely wrong about that. I want you to tell me if I am." Everything in me went still. I said, "You can stop at any point. If this is something you want to leave where it is, say so now. I mean that." She looked at me steadily. She said, "I know." And she didn't. So I told her the truth. Not all at once. Not cleanly. It came out the way real things come out, when you've been keeping them from yourself as well as from the other person. "I've been to that caf 100 times," I said. "And I never once arrived early, hoping you'd be the one to open. And then I did. And then I stopped being able to explain why." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, very softly, "Every woman I've thought about setting you up with, I've talked myself out of before I could say anything. I told Claire it was because none of them were right for you. That was only partly true." The radiator clicked. One of the delivery vans outside shifted in the wind. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine, not to take it, just to rest it there. Quietly, like a full stop after a very long sentence. "What about Claire?" I said. "She's my daughter," she said, "not my keeper." A pause. "She's also been making comments for approximately 3 months, with what I can only describe as intent. I thought about Claire at the pub. She mentioned it twice, with the expression she used when she was dropping small bombs. Of course she has, I said. Diana laughed, a real one, the unguarded kind I'd watched from across the caf without her knowing. It sounded exactly the same up close. Her phone lit up on the counter behind her. The screen said, Claire. Diana looked back at me. Her hand was still on mine. She can wait, she said. She really can, I agreed. Beat 6, time jump resolution plus CTA 3 weeks later, Diana told Claire in person, over Sunday lunch in the caf before it opened. I was not there. That was intentional. Claire texted me at 2 in the afternoon. It said, about time. Also, you owe me. Also, I'm maid of honor at the wedding, obviously. I texted back, there is no wedding. We have been together for 3 weeks. She replied, sure, followed by a single emoji that I am going to decline to describe. 6 months later, Diana repainted the front room too. The same warm gray carried through from the back. She asked me what I thought, and I said it looked like it had always been there. She said that was how she knew it was right. The room had been missing it all along. She still uses the fox mug. She still says she thinks it's lucky. I've stopped arguing with her. The evidence is becoming difficult to dispute. When people ask, and they do ask, because Claire has told the story to everyone who will stand still long enough, Diana says. He came to help. He kept coming back. Eventually, I stopped pretending I didn't know why. When people ask me, I say, she handed me a paint swatch in an empty room before the café opened and said it looked like November evenings, and I thought, I have been waiting my whole adult life to meet someone who thinks in exactly that way. She always rolls her eyes at that part. She always smiles after.